At the Mexican border, the rusty brown corrugated metal fence behind me, I pose for a picture with Elu, my dog. We stand in front of a simple statue of 5 wooden posts, painted white and rotting with age, marking the southern terminus of the Pacific Crest Trail. I plan to hike the Southern California portion of the trail in sections, alone with my dog, starting with day trips and working our way up to backcountry camping and more miles per trip each weekend. The trail spans 2,650 miles, through deserts, over mountains, and into the wilderness. From where I stand at the border fence in Southern California to the Canadian border in Washington. But I'm not thinking about all of the places the trail will take me. I'm stuck in the places I've been. Over a year has passed since I've been in the ocean, freediving with a friend in search of leopard sharks. It's been 14 months since I've jumped into a pool during a swimming and weightlifting competition in La Jolla. 16 months since I've worn scuba gear for my last operational dive in the Coast Guard, diving on an oil rig in Ventura. This might not sound like a long time to be out of the water, but during the last 10 years, I've hardly gone a week without swimming, diving, sailing, rowing, fishing, or living on a ship at sea. When I left the Coast Guard, I lost a part of my identity. I don't want to be in the water anymore. I meet the resident psychiatrist at the Veteran Affairs Clinic and shake her hand. She is young and pretty, with long dark hair tied neatly at the back of her neck. I learn that she is at the end of her year as a resident at the VA and that she will be transferring within the month. I'm disappointed, because I already like the woman. She seems genuinely dismayed that the system failed and I wasn't contacted for several months to complete my mental health evaluation and begin treatment. I trust her instinctually, but I promise myself not to like her too much, since I won't see her again. I separated from the military nearly a year and a half ago, and since then, I have been in a seemingly endless cycle of appeals to receive VA disability benefits. She ushers me into a small office filled with a desk, computer, and 3 chairs, where I am thankful they've seated me facing the door. The resident psychiatrist runs through a list of initial evaluation questions in a kind voice as my service dog lies at my feet. I started training her a year ago, and I bring her to all of my VA appointments. She's a relaxed dog when she's on duty, and her ease calms me. I reach down and pet her soft ears as a painful memory threatens to overtake me. I explain how I feel when I'm in a crowded room, that I want to escape, and when I can't, my body tenses up and I get panic attacks and migraines. I tell her that it doesn't have anything to do with claustrophobia. I'm fine in tight spaces, if men aren't there. It's just crowds of men standing nearby that bother me, and I hate waiting in lines, I say, bending over to rub Elu's belly. I explain how my dog helps, that she blocks people from standing too close, and she calms me down when I panic. It was tough for me to decide that I needed a service dog, since bringing my dog to public places makes my invisible disability very obvious. But I feel more myself when she's beside me. The woman asks if there is one main event that has caused my symptoms, if there is one time that I don't talk about that seems bigger than the others. My throat tightens up, and I hold back unexpected tears as a memory surfaces. A man whispering something so that only I can hear, his body too close, the smell of beer on his breath. His hand on my shoulder, my skin crawling under his touch. He was one of my most trusted allies at the unit, but he was different when he drank. I tried to avoid his advances, but I couldn't always do that, especially on deployments, I say. His actions were the greatest betrayal of all. At home later, I try to figure out why this memory is so vivid, when nothing really happened beyond casual touches and his insistent sexual advances. He wasn't the only enlisted man to drunkenly tell me how beautiful and sexy I was. But the nature of our jobs required us to trust each other with our lives. When I was a surface supply diver, weighed down by my gear and hanging on a tether, I relied upon the other divers at my unit to physically pull my body up to the surface of the water. If I didn't feel safe with him at a group dinner, how could I believe he would have my back when I was underwater? She asks, "Did you ever feel physically threatened, as if your life was in danger?" My mind flits through a series of experiences and lands on one. I'm working underneath a Coast Guard ship, using a metal scraper to clean seagrass off of a propeller blade nearly as long as I am tall. I'm tethered to the surface by an umbilical that feeds me a steady supply of air. On my back is an emergency tank, but with this setup, the tank is attached to the regulator on my full face mask that reaches from the top of my forehead to the bottom of my chin. There isn't a spare regulator, no emergency backup. I know that if my mask fails, I will have to bail for the surface in order to breathe. My dive buddy, the same man who disappointed and embarrassed me again and again by hitting on me in front of the other divers, is out of sight, scrubbing the other propeller. A new unit policy dictates that all divers will rotate using the same equipment, not a specific set of gear fitted to each of our needs. The full face mask that I normally wear leaks on almost every dive, but I'm used to pressing my jaw into the bottom of the mask to keep it sealed. Working on the far side of the ship from the pier, I look down at the propeller and my mask shifts. Water flows into it, and I press a hand to the front of the clear plastic, holding it to my forehead. The air flowing into my regulator sprays the water across my face. I can't see anything, and the noise of the air rushing over my ears overpowers the sound of voices coming through my earpieces. I spit water out and breathe in, filtering the spray by holding my tongue to the roof of my mouth. I taste salt and try to adjust the straps on my head, but they're already yanked down as tightly as possible. I try to shift into a position where the mask won't leak, but no matter what direction I look, water sprays across my face, and I'm blinking frantically, but can't see anything. I feel like someone has their thumb over a garden hose and is spraying me across the eyes. I'm spitting out seawater, barely breathing, and trying to make my way across the stern of the ship by feel, making sure not to entangle my umbilical on anything, including my partner's line. I hear the comms unit sputtering, and I'm holding my breath, but I can't make out anything that they're saying. I reach the edge of the ship's hull and kick to the surface. I pull the mask away from my chin to let the water drain and breathe deeply. Tears of relief mixing with the salt water as I fill my lungs with fresh air. I'm frustrated and embarrassed that I couldn't finish the dive. That night, I'll be angry when I realize that I almost died, and all because they didn't give me gear that fit properly. This could have been prevented if the chief in charge of equipment and the warrant officer before him hadn't refused to order the military-approved full-face mask that fit smaller faces, saying, "No one receives special treatment around here. We can't afford to buy you fancy gear just because you like it better. Besides, you're a supervisor. You won't be in the water much anyway." To the psychiatrist, I say simply, "There were a couple times when my dive gear didn't fit and I almost passed out underwater, or I had to abort the dive because my gear malfunctioned." She types the note into my record. I've been reading a lot about PTSD, about restoring the mind-body connection and reclaiming the emotional brain, and I hoped backpacking with Elu would help me rewire my brain. Out on the trail, a jackrabbit nonchalantly hops in front of us, black oversized ears sticking straight up. Elu's body vibrates with excitement as she watches the tall grasses where the hare disappeared. "Leave it," I say sternly, and she whines, wanting to chase. "Elu," I tell her in a sing-song voice, and she sits down on the trail in front of me, tail wagging. "Let's go." She springs to the end of the short leash, tugging at the waist strap of my backpack where I've attached her lead. The tan and black striped fur on her back stands up, and her right ear is perked, left flopping and bouncing lazily as we hike. I take in the details of the trail. Rough salt and pepper sand under my boots made from crushed granite, short dark green greasewood, and the skeletons of long-dead trees burnt in a wildfire years ago. I'm learning to love the chaparral ecosystems of Southern California. Out here, I feel like my body is my own, as if I had been trapped inside a twisted version of myself, wanting to claw a way out of my skin. My past is always there, but now I'm not consumed by it. Elu keeps me present on the trail. I watch her for signs of heat stress, and am vigilant that if I'm starting to lose concentration, we need to stop for water and food. I talk out loud to her, telling stories and singing made-up songs. She tells me how she feels with her body language. Ears perked, eyes alert, tongue lolling, or lingering in the shade. Elu always lives in the moment, and I'm learning from her. She's teaching me how to trust my instincts again, to follow impulses that I had to ignore in order to do my job. Sometimes I don't say a word for miles, and instead listen to the crunch of my boots on the sand, the rhythmic panting of my dog, the soft swoosh of my backpack as it shifts with every step. I almost enjoy the feeling of blisters growing on my heels, and the weight of the pack on my waist and shoulders is comforting. I don't mind carrying Elu's water because she is excellent company. Alone on the trail with my dog, I am happy, and the pain I feel is welcome because my body is mine again. At the edge of the Anza Borrega Desert State Park, having walked the last 17 miles without sight of another human, I suddenly feel the pull of the waves again and have a powerful urge to swim in the ocean.
That was Tenley Lozano with Elu.